Hey friends, it's Anna. I hope you all have been having an amazing day so far. Today's video is super exciting. We are moving into a new bullet journal for the second half of 2023. I'm using this beautiful sand color journal from Sequez. It has a linen cover and gold embossed wheat stalk. I think the vibe of this journal is really calming. I wanted a beige color journal because my first journal for 2023 was this one from Shop Amanda Rach Lee. It's so satisfying now that it's all filled up, and I am planning on posting a flip through of the whole thing next month. But I decided that from now on, I want to have my journals from the same year be the same color, even though they're different journals. That way it just symbolizes that they go together, and when I have all my journals next to each other on a shelf, I can clearly see which ones belong to which year. So for 2023, my color was beige, and who knows what color I'll use for next year. To start off, I'm creating a name page for this inside cover. I'm keeping this really minimal. As you'll see, this whole setup for the journal will be on the more minimal side. These spreads are time-friendly and beginner-friendly if you're wanting to recreate any of them yourself. I didn't love the text that was actually printed on the journal page, so I decided to use some parchment paper to just cover it up and provide a backdrop for where I'll write my name. I'm using a few washi tapes from this black and gold set to help frame the paper. Next, I'm using my Tombow brush pen to write my name in a calligraphy font and adding some highlights with this gold gel pen. All of my supplies will be linked in the description box below, as always, if you're curious. For the finishing touches, I'm adding some simple gold stars in two of the corners, and then I'll also use a black fine liner to add a little border. And that's it for this page. Like I said, we're going for minimal but still visually appealing. So this next page actually felt really awkward to me. It doesn't lie flat well, and when you try, it creases the name page. I felt like it just wouldn't work with the next two spreads I wanted to do, so I'm actually gluing it together with the name page. Literally just taking a glue stick and sealing these pages together so we can pretend that awkward page never existed. Getting back on track, these next two spreads are staples of every one of my journals, my grid spacing spread and key. I'm creating the key first on this left page. I guess I don't really need a key at this point because I know the symbols I use very well, but I'm including the page anyways because it just feels right. If you saw my first 2023 journal setup video, you might have noticed that I decided to keep the same theme I used in that journal because I loved how this setup looked so much and thought, why not reuse it since we're still in the same year? It's kind of a space or star theme with black and gold being the only colors. So even though it's a minimal setup, I think the contrast between the black and metallic gold makes it pretty striking. To decorate the key, I'm adding a black border along the top right corner with my black Tombow brush pen, color N15. I'm using this piece of paper so I don't get black all over the edges of the journal. And then I'll go over the black again to get a really dark background. On top of this, I'm drawing lots of little gold stars to create the effect of a night sky or open space. I'm just drawing these randomly in various shapes and sizes. With this particular gel pen, which is from Jelly Roll, when I first draw the gold on top of the black, it doesn't show up the best, but when the ink dries, it becomes a lot stronger. And once I finish filling in the space with stars, that's it for the key. On the left page here, I'm going to do my grid spacing spread. If you're new to bullet journaling, this is basically a tool to aid with future setups. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but I always start with numbering the grid spaces vertically and horizontally so I can always remember how many spaces there are on a page instead of constantly recounting. Then I'm going to draw several lines representing different ways I can break up the page. I'm using a bolder black line to separate the pages in half, both vertically and horizontally. I'm using a slimmer line for breaking the page in quarters and a dashed line for breaking the page in thirds. This is really helpful for when you're creating spreads that might break down the page in this way. You can easily refer to your grid on what that may look like and how many spaces are in each section. Sometimes I might want to have spaces between my sections, so I'm using the gold gel pen to break the page in quarters and thirds, but with spaces between each break. So I also have an example of what that would look like. As you can tell, I've been doing this on a separate page, which I cut out from the back of this journal, and that's because I'm doing a grid bookmark this year instead of putting the grid directly on the page. That way, instead of counting the spaces on the grid and then counting the spaces on whatever spread I'm making, I can just pull out this grid bookmark and use it basically as a ruler while I'm creating new pages. That should hopefully make more sense in a second. I needed to come up with a way to store this bookmark in the journal, so I decided to create a little pouch with the parchment paper on this left page so that I could slip the bookmark in and out of it. I'm folding over the sides of this rectangular cutout and I'll glue these outer flaps to the page. Because I cut off the margins of the grid spacing page, I should be able to fit this in the pouch but not have it stick up out of the journal. I'm actually really proud of how this design worked out, and I think it will make my grid spacing page so much more useful. I didn't show it on camera, but I did pull out the bookmark and use it when I was sketching some of the next pages in this spread, so already this bookmark is proving handy. The last step is to add a little title to this page, so I'm going to write grid spacing on the parchment paper pouch. Wow, parchment paper pouch. Try saying that 3 times fast. Okay, I'm creating a black background for the word grid, which I'm writing in a gold typewriter serif style font. I'm adding some stars to tie in that space theme, and then I'll finish off the title by writing spacing in a simple calligraphy font. And that completes my grid spacing and key pages. Like I mentioned, staples in every bullet journal. Next up, we have our cover page for the journal. I'm writing 2023 in large bold letters across the middle of the page using the black Tombow brush pen again. This is pretty much exactly how I did my title page in my first journal of the year. If you've seen that setup video, you've probably noticed a lot of the spreads are extremely similar. At first, I thought I was going to create a whole new theme and setup ideas for this journal, and then I realized, why reinvent the wheel if I loved my first 2023 spread so much? I'm not trying to make my life any harder than it needs to be. But also, I think having similar journal setups for both my 2023 notebooks connects these two journals as being part of the same year. I'm drawing more gold stars on top of these letters, and then to represent that this journal is for the second half of the year, I'm adding a little strip of parchment paper that will say Part 2 underneath the 2023. For the finishing touch, I'm adding some more little gold stars in the corners. Moving to the right page, this will be my quote page for the year. I wanted to create a drawing that the quote would be centered around, so I found this picture on Pinterest and I'm just recreating it on a cutout of the parchment paper. Several years ago, I had found on Pinterest a lot of drawings in this same style, and whenever I was stressed or just needed a creative outlet but didn't have a lot of creative energy, I would just pull up one of these drawings from Pinterest and recreate it. This was a very relaxing exercise to me, and I actually used one of those drawings that I had done in the past for my first 2023 setup, so I thought it would be fitting to do the same thing here. Drawing this picture was definitely very soothing. I always find it creatively rejuvenating to lean on other art that inspires me. The only thing that I wished for this picture is that I had a circular stencil so that my framing circle was more proportional, but I did end up outlining it a few more times to make it look a little better. Also, bear with me, I promise this drawing starts to look a little better once I add some shading and it's not just the bare bones. The quote I chose for this page is, "Find the magic in everyday things." I don't think this is a quote from a particular person, but kind of just a general saying. I love the sentiment of this because it's definitely something I'm continually working on, to be grateful for all the little things and seeing the joy and fulfillment in everyday life. So I hope this page can be a reminder to myself of that whenever I flip to the beginning of this journal. I stamped some of the words using my alphabet stamp set and chose to make magic and everyday a little larger and bolder with a calligraphy font. I'm adding some gold stars, of course. I think the vibe of this drawing and the quote and the starry space theme all go really well together, so I ended up being really pleased with how these pages turned out. Last step is to add a gold highlight to some of the words, and here are the final cover pages. Next up, we have my year at a glance spread. Although this will really now just be half a year at a glance because there's no need to recreate space for the months that have already passed. I'm writing my title up top and adding a gold highlight like I have been doing. For the top two corners, I'm going to create an effect similar to what I did for the key page. There's a black background and I'll add some gold stars on top. While those corners dry, I'm also drawing the 6 rectangles, which will be the background for the titles of the 6 months left in the year. I have noticed that it's helpful to leave the black ink a little bit of time to fully dry before going in with the gold. I'm adding the columns in gold to separate each month, and then we'll go back up top to finish the art. In addition to gold stars, I'm also going to draw a sun on the left side and moon on the right side. I think this ties in really well with the picture from the quote page, which also had a sun and a moon. Moving back to the functional portions of the spread, I'm titling each month in gold, and below that is where I'll write the calendar outline for each month, which still leaves plenty of room below to write what events I have for the month. My year at a glance spread is where I can record any plans that I have far in advance. If you're familiar with bullet journaling, you know that typically we only make our monthly calendars and spreads as each month comes. So this is the place where you can write things down for months that you haven't created yet in your journal. I usually save this space for set trips or appointments or events, but there is plenty of space in each column, so if there is a project or general goal I want to go ahead and assign to a future month, I do make a note of that in pencil, and then I'll see that and be reminded of it when I'm creating my monthly calendar or task list. And here's the final year at a glance spread. Now, since I am a planner and I like to have things scheduled pretty far in advance, I did want to have a space to record things that might be planned for the beginning of 2024. So this left page here will be my 2024 preview. I'm going to create basically a condensed version of my year at a glance for January through June of 2024 on this page. I'm combining a serif and calligraphy font for the title, writing 2024 in black and preview in gold. I'm using the same design as in the previous page, creating some black rectangles for the backdrop of each month's title. I'll put a mini calendar for each month below the titles and then leave a little space to write in any plans. Since I'm fitting 6 months in just one page, there will of course not be a lot of space below each calendar to write in, but I think that should be fine because I shouldn't have a ton of plans to write here. I've never done this spread before in my bullet journal, so we'll see how much I use it. I think it will be helpful even if it's not totally necessary, because usually if I'm planning something this far in advance, it's like a vacation or something that I'm going to remember. So like I said, I'm just going to experiment with it and see how much I use this in the coming months. I thought the spread looked a little plain as is, so I'm going to add some gold stars around the title. Since I wrote half the title in gold, I decided to add some black stars as well. I am really excited for this next spread I'm creating on the right page. This is my ideal day spread. I've seen these online, and of course it's kind of just a general thing to do, even outside a bullet journal, to come up with an ideal daily schedule that can guide you. I work from home most days of the week, and since I do contract work, my schedule is very flexible, which is amazing. I very much appreciate that freedom, but I think I could also benefit from some more structure in my life. One of my goals I've been working on in 2023 is getting into a consistent morning routine, and along with that, starting work and stopping work at a consistent and regular time. I'm still very much in the process of making this into a habit, so I thought an ideal day spread would be a great opportunity to really reflect on what I want my days to look like and provide a written guide that can motivate me to stick to it. Now, like the title states, this is an ideal day, not what every day of my life is going to look like. This isn't for weekends when I'm not working, and the schedule also might not work for all the days I go to work in person. But I still like to have a default guide for what I would like to do on most days. I have my day written out starting at 6 a.m. and ending at 10:30 p.m. Each of these boxes running down the center of the page is for 1 hour, with one grid space on the page being 30 minutes. I'm separating out my day into 3 sections: my morning routine that I mentioned, work hours, and evening rest. I put the word rest in that last title intentionally because I'm trying to be better about actually planning some time to rest instead of scheduling work or chores that would take up every minute before going to sleep. I usually end up taking some time to read a book or watch TV or do something to relax each night because it's impossible to go nonstop all day. But a lot of the time while I'm doing those things, I'm thinking, oh, but I haven't gotten done all the chores on my to-do list, so I really should be working on something else. And then it's not a time of true rest or relaxation because there's that underlying stress of thinking that I should be doing something productive. But if I schedule time to rest, I'm hoping that will help manage stress levels and actually feeling rested and rejuvenated when the next day rolls around. So as you can see, I added some little doodles to each of the section titles, and now I'm drawing gold lines coming out from the time of each step in my daily routine, and then writing out that step in black next to the line. I'm using varying lengths of the gold lines and how far out the text is, just so it's visually easier to take in and read. I honestly love how this spread looks, and I'm hopeful that it will also be a big motivator to really make this daily routine into a long-term habit. On to the last spread of this setup, and I actually forgot to press record while I started drawing it. My apologies for that. As you can see, this is going to be my mid-year review, a place where I can reflect on how 2023 has gone so far and hopefully get some insights on what I could do to have a more successful second half of the year. In my first 2023 journal setup, which I'll show you here, I set some goals at the beginning of the year under 4 main life domains: faith, health, personal, and professional. So I decided to format this mid-year review into those same 4 sections and focus my reflections specifically on those goals I set. I'll probably do some more general reflecting in my writing journal. This page is really just for those specific goals and how I'm doing on those. I'm stamping out the titles using my alphabet stamp set, and then I'm going to add 1 gold star on either side of each title to frame it. This is a super clean and minimal setup, which I definitely prefer to create for pages that are eventually going to have a lot of writing in them. Once each of these boxes are filled up with my reflections, it could easily get really busy and overwhelming to look at if there was too much going on in the margins. And that is it for my mid-year 2023 journal setup. Let's do a final flip through of all the spreads. I am still so in love with this black and gold theme, and I'm pretty happy with this setup overall. I think it will be really functional as well. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed hanging out with me. Feel free to subscribe if you're interested in more bullet journal content, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day.